Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, and welcome back to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and Television. My name is Chris Morgan. I'm here with Jonathan Ian Manzur.
Hello.
Stephen Amosi.
On my own Battleship.
And Scott Thurlow.
Yatta.
And and today we are doing 2010's Space Battleship Yamato, and I think this is part of our non-American film science fiction, part of the science fiction.
Yes, it is the month for science fiction.
It is this month for non-American international science fiction, non-American science fiction.
Yes, that's the exact name of it.
Well, all right, now that I've overdone that, this is the 2010 movie Space Battleship Yamato, which is based upon the anime Space Battleship Yamato, brought over in the 70s as Star Blazers and redone a couple more times as anime. This is a live action version of it. And Ian, do you have a funny logline for us?
Well, I thought this would be fitting to read some Bible verses.
Hit me.
So if you all gather to be in prayer, I'm going to read from Corinthians 1. When I was a child, I spake as an individual. I understood as an individual. I thought as an individual. But when I became a Japanese stoic space commander, I put away childish things. Thank you very much.
That's elaborately fitting.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
Thank you there, Deacon Manzur.
Sure.
Scott, would you like to start us off with the plot?
Sure. So in the future, in the year 20XT6, there is a battle going on. An alien race has been assaulting the Earth with, I guess, irradiated meteors, which seems redundant to me. So the Earth is in a bad position. They've been being bombarded with these things. There is a space force in place attempting to fight against them. And one ship survives off of a big battle off of Mars. And they come back, dragging their tail behind their legs to Earth. A brother of a veteran who was in that battle happens to come in contact with one of the alien ships, and he survives a large dose of radiation. This is the impetus for them to sort of say, hey, guess what? We believe the aliens may have sent us a message and technology and also can reverse the devastation on Earth caused by the meteors. So they recruit a whole bunch of people to go to the last battleship, the titular Yamato, if you will, to use its alien technology to warp to some planet in the Magellan Cloud, I believe, to obtain the technology and to tame the radiation reversing thing. And on the way, they got into a bunch of battles with the alien race. They come in contact with them. They realize they're sort of a symbiote entity, species that combines. A bunch of battles ensue. Heroic sacrifices happen here and there. They make it to the planet. They encounter the good half of the collective consciousness, hive mind species, which inhabits one of their crew. They decide to bring that person, now entity, back to Earth that can still reverse radiation. And on the way, right as they get back to Earth, there's a big battleship, a big conflict. The last super battleship from the aliens appears, and again, one last enemy-style heroic sacrifice, and they do in fact save the Earth, or are going to reverse it and make it green again, if you will. And that's pretty much it. Like, a lot of other minor things happen, but that's the overarching plot of a big basically space opera western, more or less. And so if I'm going to analyze it for you guys, I'm going to take a page from Chris's book and give it probably a 0.5 on the intro, going back to our old scale, 1 on the middle. I was pretty invested. It takes a bit to get set up sort of meandering. It's here and there. I get it, how they do it. And yes, to be fair, as you mentioned, Chris, because it's based on the enemy, they have to cram a lot into it. But since I was not familiar with the original source material at all, I'm taking this on face value. So 0.5 for the intro, 1 for the middle, 0.5 for the ending. My nitpicks will come out in other questions, so that adds up to an alright 2 for the plot.
Okay. Anybody else want to?
Well, this very much felt like there was other material that I was missing while I was watching it. It felt very much like it's based off of a show. Very much felt like what's that Josh Whedon Firefly.
Firefly, yeah.
It's like watching the Firefly movie without having watched any of the previous.
Yeah.
I was just, I can watch this, but there's a lot of information I'm missing. And I understood what was going on. It was pretty clear, but it just felt like certain characters were in there because they mattered in the show versus mattered narratively in the movie. There were parts I liked. It did take a little while to get invested in the world. Yeah. And so I'm going to give it a 2 as well for that. But overall, once it started get going, I was along for the ride. And I think they did a good job of, very much like Battlestar Galactica, where it felt that there was a constant threat and that the enemy was always on their tail. And it's easy to do in a movie. It's easier to do in a movie than in a TV show. But yeah, they always felt under duress.
The tension was always kind of there.
That's exactly a great point there. So yeah, 2.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It did take a little while to get invested. It seems like a medium budget film in that
double A budget.
A lot of the space battles and things, which was like most of the movie, were like, oh, this could have benefited from a couple extra bucks here and there. We could have put a little bit more into the effects. And that took me out of it a little bit in the beginning, but as the movie rolled on, I got used to it.
It sort of mattered less, I'll say to you, right?
Exactly. And I kind of got more into what they were trying to do with the plot and things like that. But also, just the initial plot was kind of, I don't know, it seemed a little bit rushed. The initial battle was like, oh, this guy died, and it seems like he meant a lot to people, but I don't know why or anything like that. And, it turns out he's the main character's brother, but still, I feel like his death could have meant more if we knew him for more than 12 seconds.
You're missing sort of some of the background stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
I think I'm probably going to come down on a 2 as well. This movie was a lot of fun by the end. I didn't think it was the best movie plot-wise by any means, but it did engage me, and I thought that, and I had a good time with it, so I'm going to give it a 2.
Do you mind me interrupting?
Nope.
So it's a fairly bog standard hero's journey, except with a Japanese spin on it versus an American spin. When we'll get to in themes,
exactly.
But, just the narrative of having to chase after MacGuffin, and so there's a weird thing in that. I felt that they set up that as the audience, that they don't know that they're lying to the people that there's this MacGuffin out there and that they're not sure. And they treat it throughout the movie like it's this big mystery, but it's not. I know you told me early on.
Yeah, you told me right away about that. Yeah.
So that part was weird and as a small little
it's a little inconsistent, I guess.
But overall, plot lines of going into the frontier of space to try to find this device that'll save. Yeah, it's a fun story, even if it's not a complex story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am familiar with the source material. I grew up watching the show, and I knew the amalgams they made. I knew this changes they made to make Iskandar, which is a place they're going to, and the Gamelons, who are the enemies. I knew why they did what they did, that in the thing, Deathlock, who is the leader there, they're actual humanoids. They're blue, but they're humanoids. And I understand why they did what they did, making them conscious, and this is because it's going to save a lot for not having to really develop 5 other characters when they're trying to service this.
Yeah, they're not humanoids in this.
Right. And I think they did a good job with that. Like I said, I'm kind of on that precipice where it's just like, well, on the one hand, I know all this backstory and the stuff they're leaving out. On the other hand, I got to figure, it's kind of, I've got the best and worst.
Take it for what it is.
Yeah, best and worst of both worlds. But one of the things I liked, and you guys reminded me of this, was at the beginning they have they get this schematics for a warp engine and for
a wave
motion. Yeah, and a wave motion gun, which is this huge gun that comes from the bow of the ship and takes all the basically most of the ship's power. And they need to use it right away, right after they launch. They need to use it. And they said, we just gave away our weapon. It's like, well, we had no choice. So they go into one battle and use it. And then the battle, when they get to Iskandar, the Gamelas shoot a missile at the have a missile barrage that distracts the ship, and all the fighters and all the resources are going to block that. Meanwhile, right up the middle, they just they have something that blocks the wave motion gun. It takes it out.
Basically, it's blocking up the muzzle of the gun.
It's blocking the muzzle of a gun. What I'm saying is that's a nice little detail. You had something that was set up. And and the thing is like, well, it doesn't matter because we're going to defeat it anyway, and boom. And they take that's it for the wave motion gun for the rest of the.
Sure.
But it's like little things like that I like. And the little details, the character work I thought was great. I'm also going to give it a 2. And I'm going to give it a 2 because, the reason I went in all that is because I want you to understand from both sides of it. Well, I'm giving it a 2 is its pacing issues. Yeah. It is very much like an anime in that, hi, we're in a crisis, but let's have 10 minutes worth of exposition to one another while this crisis is going on, which, is, it's the best live action anime I've ever seen, for what it is. And,
also the only,
but like, well, the only one from the only ones that the Americans didn't screw up. No, but what I'm saying is, my only complaint was the pacing issues. I understand everything, but
are you saying that The Last Airbender is not a masterpiece?
Anyway,
I am saying that.
Wait, sure. Is this a history of American anime whitewashing and live action? Okay.
Now that's a separate episode.
Well, hold on. First of all, Last Airbender was an American show. No.
I'm talking about the live action. About how
right, but it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not for this episode.
No, that's what I'm saying. You get
it's a whole other thing.
We're gonna
2's around for.
I apologize for making a joke.
It's all good.
So it's 2's all the way around.
Never make a joke.
Making a warp jump.
Yeah, seriously. And
but I just do have a question for you because I read up a little bit of people's reviews of this who have seen the show, and I heard that even though they made changes, they kept the spirit of the original anime. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Find that to be true.
As I said before, I've seen this like 3 times now, and every time I see this ship launch, I get tears in my eyes because it's like.
That's fair. I can respect that, even if like I'm not familiar with the source material, but
and this is going to cut in a little bit to style, but I mean, since you brought it up, the music they used in it was all from the anime, and it was used. I'll get back to it in style, but
that's cool.
Keeping to the spirit of things, they really the details. Oh, and even the doctor with the cat and the huge bottle of sake. Aside from the fact that in the anime, the doctor was a portly, bald doctor with glasses. He did walk around with his cat in a big bottle of sake. So
they kept them.
I figured that was from the anime.
Nice. Yeah, that was a very anime thing. But
all right.
Okay, so it's on to me with themes, and I'm going to have to say the strongest theme in this is self-sacrifice. Mm-hmm. I mean, right from the beginning.
They literally embody it.
Yeah, Kodai's brother, or their last name's both Kodai, but he sacrifices himself to save the captain and save Yuki. Sorry. And it's just a systematic thing of sacrifices where people are willing
cycle of self-sacrifice.
It's a cycle of self-sacrifice, but I don't want it to kind of cheapen it because each one of them is organic and it's keeping to their character. You're not seeing any acts of heroism that come out. It's just like, hey, this person's not a hero. And then at the end, we find out these are all character elements and there's varying degrees of self-sacrifice that go on throughout this.
In fact, Yuri is almost desperate for a self-sacrifice and she keeps getting denied.
That's true.
Yeah,
I noticed that and that's a good point.
Why did you save me?
Yeah, I mean, so I was a bit wavering on themes, but yes, certainly that's there. And it all comes it's sort of it's paying it forward. from the very get-go, right? And all the way back as it circles back at the ending. So yeah, I guess I don't really have a cause to complain too much about it. Like, it was fine. I guess my issues with it will be spread out into maybe character questions as we're coming up to, but yeah, certainly. And it's a very enemy theme, of course, and like given the nature of like, as Chris was filling in me about the history of it, like previously, like offcast. So yeah, like I can't fault it all that much. And it I guess to say they were all set up. They all were like, they didn't come out of nowhere, like you said. They were all paid off. And they made sense to the characters that were doing it. And yeah, the Yuki thing is funny that like she was desperate. Like that was basically part of her character in and of itself. And then she sort of like did have one, but not in the way she thought she might. So yeah, they all made sense to all of them. And I don't know if there's any other themes beyond that, other than like Earth Forever.
Actually, there is.
Okay.
So one thing I notice in international films is often redemption of a country, especially after
all right,
great
yeah,
losses.
You're right about that. Yeah.
Yamato, the ship, is named after a great battleship, a storied battleship of the Japanese Navy. If you look at the Wikipedia page, it's tremendous. It's
extensive.
It's almost too much information on there, like to like read in one sitting. And the idea is that the Earth is bombarded with radiation. You said it was redundant, but that was a huge part of like the Japanese culture and what we did to them in the war.
No, sorry, let me. Yeah. I said the meteors being irradiated was kind of redundant, but like you're right. No, but the angle of that
aspect to it, and it's Japan. It's not America saving the Earth. It's not Germany saving the Earth. It's not Russia. It's Japan is the one who are in space fighting these monsters. Sure. With their history propelling them forward. You know what? It's a good theme there, and I respect that. And yeah,
that's fair.
It is an interesting. Excuse me. It is an interesting theme, and you're right. There is this like really like in a lot of Japanese films that I've seen. There is this very. There's something that I was reading recently that was like. Yeah, out of the 40s and 50s, after you get that, you have Japan coming up with things like Godzilla, the monsters coming out of radiation, and the U.S. has what? Superheroes, because we have a whole different take on what radiation is and like nuclear power. So like, it is interesting to look at a theme like that.
That sort of dynamic.
That is, like radiation is destroying the planet, and they need to figure out a way to save it and stop it from doing so. I think you're absolutely right that this is definitely a look back, and probably more so the original anime than this movie, which comes out of the anime. I'm not sure if they were. It's more of like you're just riding the coattails of the anime at this point, but like the idea is that this is a throwback to World War II. There's this idea of this battleship kind of saving the nation, saving the world at this point in this. I thought it was kind of interesting that they talked about saving the world, but they literally did not devote even a single frame to anything other than Japan in this.
Well, I mean, that speaks to like look at any of our films, like
I mean that to a certain extent that's true, but it also speaks to like Japan is a very self-sufficient country, and like they do look inwards for a lot of things in terms of at least what I've seen of their movies and like, read about the country. I don't consider myself a great scholar on Japan or anything, but I think that the themes in this are pretty solid, and I think that you made a couple very good points. The self-sacrifice angle is really good as well. There is that very strongly in this film, and I'm gonna just kind of agree with you guys, and I think it's pretty strong. I'm gonna give it a 1.
Yeah.
I was gonna say other themes that you were talking about. I mean, self-sacrifice is one thing, but like we can get into the motivations as to why, Kodai's what he does. He goes on the ship because he wants to know about the man who is responsible for his brother's death. Like everybody's got an ulterior motive that feeds into this that, and I'm not going to go into because we'd be here all night just talking about this. But one little tidbit of information, when Ian was looking up the wiki and I was looking up the wiki precast, the original Yamato was supposed to go on a one-way trip to Okinawa. It was supposed to ground itself and just unload its armaments. And at the end of this, ultimately, Kodai sacrifices the Yamato to save the planet. So it actually, in real history, it never made it there. It was sunk prior to it. But in this one, it succeeds in that mission. It never did. So, I mean, I just thought that was a really interesting dynamic as well.
Sure, it feeds into what he said, for sure.
Also, just one last point on this is the idea of the hero's journey. In the American one, you have the hero become like the Ubermensch in a lot of ways, get the girl, save the day. And here the ideal is really like giving yourself for the greater good. And I think that's, in a way, a very noble hero's journey there.
Mm-hmm. As Spock would say, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one.
Indeed. Yeah, so
I think Spock would like the crew of the Yamato.
I do too.
I'm giving it a 1.
I am too. So
All
it's
right.
ones all around?
I believe so, yeah.
Ones.
And it's Ian with antagonist.
Nope. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So, aliens with irradiated meteorites.
Schizo aliens.
Yeah, I mean, were they effective antagonists? I think so, especially the fact that they're adaptable. And it's shown throughout this. You brought up a little bit before about them seeing the gun and they plugging it immediately. But they also, all the armaments are on the top, so we're going to plant a mine on the bottom. Like, they're, aside from their, in a sense, overconfidence in not realizing that their homeworld was so vulnerable. I mean, when it came to space fights in space, they were always a threat, and you never knew like who would die because of that. And even like when they got on the ground, a lot of people died. Like this was a tough enemy, and whether they're representative of Americans or not, I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to give the American Aliens a strong one.
If they were indeed. No, I mostly agree that, like, yes, they're definitely a good antagonistic force. And, like, one of the reveals about, I suppose, say, when they get to the alien planet is that they hive mind collective consciousness, but half of their collective consciousness is against the other. Like, only, like, it's hard to say it. Only half of the alien force is actively attacking humanity or the Earth. The other half is like resigned to die, essentially, and then agrees to basically meld / create a symbiote relationship with a human person in order to like enact their plan against like their last desperate attempt to survive in their own way without being aggressive. So yeah, I mean, yes, that it's almost this probably is on a style bit, but it's very anime-ish in the way they are attacking for sure. But that's still, I think, doesn't detract from the fact that it was a good setup. It was a good conflict, and I think it was portrayed well and enacted well throughout in terms of antagonists.
Yeah, I did really like that as well. I thought that they were a really interesting enemy in that only half of them was an enemy. You know, like the other half of them was trying to help humanity, and like and also their like attack vectors were really interesting, as you were saying. Like they were really adaptable, and even when they got like onto the ship, they could like take over a human body. Like, that was
true.
An interesting thing. What kind of bugged me about them was it seemed like they were maybe too like. It seemed like they kind of changed the way that they acted all the time, but not.
I see what you
in
mean.
a necessarily logical way all the time. I don't know. It felt like it felt like their powers were different.
Inconsistent.
It felt like their powers were different every time they like kind of encountered each other. But that notwithstanding, I thought they were like a good antagonistic enemy throughout the film, and like they were always making themselves known and like kind of like right on the tail of the humans.
Except for one part when they're in the city and they're in the big huge battle. And then they just disappear for like 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, they had to talk.
Yeah.
They were like, hold on, give us some time to talk.
Exactly. We're going back to that.
Enemy trope.
Yeah.
But as also what makes them, what I think, this would have been a really easy alien adversary to drop the ball on. And, to what Ian and I said about things you learn about them from their actions, from their battle tactics. I mean, you need Desla to come up to inhabit, to have the face of the enemy twice in the film. I mean, it weren't even like huge exposition dumps. There were just enough information.
Sure.
But the enemy's actions, and Steve, you mentioned this before, the enemy's actions really said a lot about who they were. Even the way they went about the attacks, that they were adapting, that they were learning. So, I mean, yeah, again, this could have been a real easy an adversary to screw up, and they did a good job with it. So I'm giving it a 1 as well.
Adapting and learning. Forget it. They're not Americans.
They can't be representative of us.
They might be a machine we made, though.
So are we all ones around?
I believe so. Yep.
Okay.
Some sort of Terminator.
And Steve-O, what did you say?
Nothing.
All right, Steve-O, would you like to continue with protagonists?
Sure. Kodai Susumu, I believe is his name.
Kodai the Younger.
The brother who starts off as a guy searching the beach for rare coins. He's a very interesting protagonist. I think he's the main protagonist throughout this.
Yeah, certainly.
I don't think there's really any other secondary protagonist, to be honest. Everybody else is kind of a supporting character.
Yeah,
to me, but like,
he's definitely the focus.
He seems to be like this kind of fuck up in the beginning and kind of grows into his role pretty well. Like he's just he's basically Poe from Star Wars. But I think that he does a good job. I think that he does a good job. Maybe a little bit over the top at times. I'm not gonna say he's my favorite protagonist in the world ever, but by any means. But he grows into the role pretty well, and by the end, I think you definitely have like some kind of bond. Like as an audience member, you have a bond with him that I really appreciated. I don't have that much more to say about him. He's fairly I don't know, not forgettable because he's a pretty like.
Well, he's a template, as is all the characters in this film. But I don't disagree that he's like solid enough.
No, I think that they do a good job with writing enough into him to make him a decent protagonist. And like I don't think he's the strongest part of this film, but he's solid. I'll probably give him a 1.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree. As Ian pointed out, he basically is on his hero's journey, and I think they did a good job sketching him out, if you will, like in that position. And like, yeah, while not like the most engaging one ever, I think it all makes sense. His arc was certainly fulfilled, right? He starts at a certain point and has like a certain like issue, if you will, and that issue sort of flips its head when he learned, like at the end of it, when he comes around to seeing that. So yeah, like the actor was fine, and again, the character, while an archetype, basically, like I said, a template, it was a fine template, and they followed through with it well enough.
Okay. I don't really have much more to add. Once again, I'm just admiring the symmetry that at the beginning, his brother sacrificed himself to save the captain and Yuki, which
came full circle. Like
but when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's again, details in this thing were really good.
Sure.
I'm giving him 1.
I mean, I didn't cry when he died, but I nodded in respect when he decided to go out.
Poured one out for him.
That's
fairly effective.
1 for that. Yeah. Here's the thing: is his arc was believable. It didn't feel like they jumped anything. It didn't feel like it felt like a natural progression.
Yeah,
and that's what I didn't expect to have like the most complex character in the world from what is it? Space Battleship Yamato.
Yeah.
I got exactly what I needed out of that character.
I will say this: I expected at least a small part of this movie to be dedicated to him trying to sabotage the ship when he was like, "I hate you. You killed my brother. Oh no, we're at war. Okay, I'm on your ship now." And then he was like, "All right, I'm part of your crew. All right, now I'm the captain for some reason."
No,
Like,
but
that was kind of quick.
No, but that goes into the details I was talking about. Like, if you follow, I mean, yeah, they had to expedite things because it is 2 hours and 18 minutes as opposed to a 26 episode series or season or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, they did go up.
I thought that was natural enough.
Yeah, but I was gonna say they did give you enough so it wasn't like out of left field.
Sure.
Why did he stop hating them, the captain?
Because he realized
They came to a mutual respect. He understood
his captain also lost.
Because he
I'm just
put
saying
away
it's all-
childish things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Exactly.
a perfect log line to start off with, dude.
So, yeah.
Dude.
I'll
All
give
right.
him a 1.
So I'll give him a 1 as
Okay.
well, even though my question goes largely unanswered.
Sit with it, Steve-O. And with that, we're going on to Scott with secondary characters.
So this one's kind of iffy in a sense because, yeah, this, like you said, this is the most enemy like live action movie I've possibly ever seen in my life.
Mhm.
So that means like to expand upon what you said about protagonists, they are all like the archetypes you've seen. Like there's an over the top security guy, which I know some of you like, some of you dislike him. There's like the stoic, well veteran captain, the original captain who passes on his mantle to Kodai. And like then there's his teammates, like, you know, you're a loafer, and then like there's the loner like hardcore chick who's like the awesomest ace pilot ever. Like there's shit you've seen, like
Action girl.
Yeah,
It
you've
is
seen
totally
it.
Battlestar Galactica. You got that.
You've
Starbuck
seen
thing.
this kind of stuff, like these kind of characters in so many things. So like to me, like, yeah, I recognize them all as for the templates, like I said, that they are. And like not that any of the actors in any case like did a bad job, but they were just so sketchwork to me. Like there was no other way that these characters could have unfolded given the nature and the situation of this story. So like I'm leaning towards a 0, not only because of that, only because like they're most cookie cutter sort of cardboard cutouts that, yeah, serve their role. And the people they got to play them were totally fine, but there wasn't much to them beyond that. It's almost like, I think I want to call back to like Prometheus. Like, hey, you've seen our character in every movie ever, so now you don't need any other information whatsoever at all. So that's how I'm coming down on it originally, like to start out with. So you guys
I'm going to
talk it out.
2 things I'm going to say about this.
Okay.
1, great big bushy beard.
Mm-hmm.
2, the problem I feel, and this is what really comes into the fact that watching a movie that I know is based off of a show, and that I'm sure that there's characters out there that are fan favorites, and that they needed to have every single character incorporated them. They didn't have time to develop all of them, but so there is fan servicey moments in this that I feel, or and the characters that were built prior, but that's not fair to a moviegoer. So yeah, it was just the bare bones of those characters structured. So I'm more towards you on that.
I'm going to give them a 1, and I'm going to focus on they did have a lot of characters to service, and I know,
and then a lot of fans to service,
and a lot of fans to service.
And I didn't feel like I got serviced enough.
I'm not touching that one anyway. No,
Neither did they.
yeah, okay. Anyway, no, but the captain and Yuki, I thought, they were both well. If anybody else was a cookie cutout, I think they were.
They had more depth, but
they had more depth. Yeah. But I don't know. I felt for them. I was engaged with two. Let's put it this way. If I'm not engaged with any of the secondary characters, if there's nothing that, whether or not they're an archetype or not, it does come down to the devil is in the details, and how they approach it, how the thing's constructed, from the script to the directing, from the actor. And I have to say, I was very, very engaged with Yuki and with the captain. So I am going to give him a 1.
See, the thing is, the captain's, all he did was be stoic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's stoic, awesome captain, like 101.
Yeah. So like, I loved the stoic captain. I don't know if he was a great character. I loved Saito, the security guy. I don't know if he's a great character. Like, Yuki was fine. It's probably the most developed secondary character, but still not all that well developed. I mean, her biggest change was she went from not liking the guy to fucking liking the guy, right?
Yes.
So I think I'm gonna fall down on the side of like a 0 for supporting. It just wasn't all that. Like, there were a bunch of interesting characters that were like, oh yeah, this would be cool if we had 20 episodes to explore these characters, but we didn't. We had 2 hours and 15 minutes or whatever it was. And that's fine in terms of what the movie was, but it wasn't much. It didn't do much for the supporting characters. There was several times where people died and I was like, who the fuck was that? Which doesn't bode well for the supporting character list. And it's just because they didn't have enough time to develop all those characters, which is fine. Like, I guess they didn't really need to. I still had fun with the movie, but I'm going to overall give the supporting characters a 0. I think.
To your point, though, one of the movies I think of while I was watching this was I just lost the name of it. It's the one with the bugs and the
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
That had a fairly large cast, and they did a decent job of giving all of them it was a lot of time over the top. But that's why you remember the security guy, because he was over the top about things. Left an impression. A lot of the secondary characters was like, oh, you're the guy with the kid. Oh, you're the
doctor with the you're the doctor with the booze. Yep.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you have one characteristic, and there wasn't the.
My final thought, I'll just piggyback on that, is that once they introduce a number of these characters after a scene or two, I can predict exactly what they're going to act like in the next scene and what was going to happen to them. So like, it was obvious. So like, again, it was just under the average of what I would say actually makes a good secondary character, even though they follow the archetypes fine.
Okay, I mean, I do see what you're all saying. I'm still going to come off on the side of one.
That's fine.
But, like, yeah, I see where you're all coming from.
Because you're a fan and you were serviced.
I'm not touching that one. Anyway, it's Timmy with dialogue.
You did touch that one.
Go on. Go on with dialogue, buddy.
And the dialogue. Well, the subtitles are really funny. Like sometimes the way things are spelled.
They were a little off. Whoever they got.
Yeah.
I like our as AR.
There was a bunch of stuff like that. But
the dialogue was fine. I mean, there was those moments where everything was, actions were going on. We had a 10-minute conversation in the middle of dialogue, in the middle of structure, whatever, a space battle, whatever, but nothing that took me out. Let's put it that way. And what I think we talked about, like in another film, is if things don't gel, things like they're trying to be too clever or whatever, something that'll take me out. Nothing here really took me out. And like I said, as I often say, dialogue, if you is usually the easiest to get from me. So I'm going to give it a 1. It was good. It's fine.
Now, sorry, Steve, that's briefly. Translation, yes, like on screen was a little choppy, but I mostly agree that like it was believable enough. It was natural to the story. It fit in there. So I don't have many complaints other than the fact that just whatever person, it was like a Woosleyism, like, but not to that degree. Some of it, there was a little wonkiness, but overall, what characters said to each other and how it applied to the plot, I thought was fine, pretty much. So, good, buddy.
So, I'd be interested to know that, by the way, this movie is available, the entire movie is available on YouTube. Go watch it there if you'd like. I believe Chris and Scott watched it on Blu-ray.
Yes, I got a Blu-ray,
yeah. And Ian and I watched it on YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'd be interested to know if the subtitles are different between the two of those. I basically agree with what you guys have said about the subtitles. I'm not sure if I'm going to give this dialogue a 1. It's very like bog standard
super
action, anime dialogue.
Right.
There are a couple, but the only reason I would give it a 1, and I might just for this, is there are a couple scenes where they like go into a little bit of like philosophy and like talking about especially when they're talking about the what are they, the Gamillions or the Gamelons?
The Gamelon.
and the Iskandur, and kind of what their deal is, which I liked, and just a couple of discussions about like the future of humanity and like needing this kind of Deus Ex Machina to survive, which is interesting. So there's gonna be 2 episodes this week. One that is the end of humanity because Deus Ex Machina
just pieced out
doesn't exist, and one because one is humanity continues to exist because the Deus Ex Machina arrives. But, and I'm sorry if I ruined something for anybody, but
I think you were vague enough.
Yeah. But I think there's enough in the dialogue here where there's nothing like special about it as far as I'm concerned, but there's enough like interesting conversations that are had throughout this film to give it a 1. There are, on the other hand, some almost cringy conversations. I would say
I'm not arguing with that
at some points. So what do you think, Ian?
So at one point I decided that I was going to code a little bit while watching the movie, and then realized I had to read the subtitles.
Sure.
So, but the thing is, I almost forgot there was dialogue in this. Like, in a weird thing, it's not what I remember. The trajectory of the story and the style of it. I don't remember like the conversations, good or bad. So, I guess
they're sort of just there.
I guess it will go on the fact that my overall impression of the movie, whether I give it a 0 or a 1, just like if it built up the goodwill enough for me to say that whether it was a 0 because it offered nothing exemplary, or whether it's a 1 because it like did its job, and I'm gonna lean on the 1 because nothing I felt offensive. It might have been different if I listened to it in English and not reading the subtitles. But to me, it added to the almost anime element to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess that was going to be my thought too. It sort of bleeds in the style, but it's what it sort of makes sense to be because of the nature of it, as you said.
I like that. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the 1.
Okay, so all 1 to R?
Yep.
Okay, very good. And Ian, it's to you with style.
So while watching this, it felt like a really well done TV movie.
I do like that, yeah.
And if that's good or bad, because the CGI isn't always up to par. Sometimes you forget about it and you're enjoying the ride. They actually have a really cool scene with a robot that made me wonder why they didn't just send robots to fight this war. But yeah, like,
yeah. Where did that fucking thing come from?
Yeah, I understand. Again, fan service that definitely was in the anime and probably had more of a role. But I'm like, this is what I need at the moment when it came out to really like. But yeah. I think that one of the things that this is a war movie in a lot of senses, and I enjoyed both the ship battles, and I thought they were really well done, and even the ground fighting. When they're bringing the troop, and the one alien comes down and stabs the two with the 2 drivers. Like, there's a lot of like good action sequences. Not as good as say, what was that movie?
Starship
Troopers, but it had a feel like that, like a TV movie version of that. So,
yeah, I mean, I see what you mean. Like, I feel in a similar way. So, like, to me, right when it ended, I was like, there's like a mismatch of Starship Troopers, like Star Trek. One of you mentioned Firefly. Like, I felt like they threw all this kind of stuff in a blender, and for the budget they had, did the best they could. And like, so like, that's fine. Like, some of the stuff, yeah, it's not fucking like Hollywood budget. Like, what do you want? But it looked fine for what it is, and even like some of the framing shots when characters are even just talking to each other, especially on the main ship, right? They're just like they're in a corridor and they're in someone's like room or whatever. Like, I don't really have any complaints about that. And so, sure, you can look at it and be like, It's not the most, expensive CGI ever, but does it need to be? I don't think so. And I think for what it does show, I think it works more than it doesn't. More often, in fact. So I'll probably end up giving it a 1.
It adds a bit to its charm.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed.
One of the things I was noticing about it last night, and I touched on this when we discussed Sabrina, is the fact that budgetary reasons you basically have X amount of sets, and you kind of have to imply that there's more to this ship than there is. You have to shoot it different ways, and you have to make certain things seem. And I think they did a really, really good job with that. I mean, as somebody who's, I can simultaneously. Again, I've seen this 3 times, so I have the luxury of like knowing what's there and being able to step back from it and like see at a more objective point of view, in terms of deconstructing the sets and how they would have shot this. And you said it was a war picture, and you really got that, what they did on Battlestar Galactica, where they really gave it a verisimilitude that we didn't have clean white corridors. These are the corridors you'd find in a naval vessel.
Sure.
Yet they had little things from, being in the future, like the sliding doors, and they had little control panels. I bet it was never enough for too much in one direction or the other. And I also like the mishmash of styles. Sometimes were more like touchpads, and sometimes were,
Sure.
Sometimes you had flat screens, and sometimes you had screens that looked like they came out of the 70s. It really gave you a feel that, yes, everything may look polished, but these people are still scrapping together whatever they can to make these things work.
I do have one I think it's a really serious problem. Their wave gun control thing looks like you could snap it off if you put a little bit of pressure.
It looks like an
to
arcade thing.
Yeah.
I did notice that. But again, it still kind of worked. But yeah, some things were more cheesy.
This is their main weapon. And
I bet you that looked cool as fuck in the anime, though.
It did actually.
It like comes up and like you're like, all right, ready?
Yeah.
But yeah,
sure.
no, exactly. Like there are things that work better in cartoons and things that work better in film, and this did a pretty good job with everything. I wouldn't say it's great stylistically, but it's probably going to be enough for a 1, just based on how fun it was. I really actually like the alien design.
Good point.
In this,
Nobody mentioned that. Yeah.
The Gamilla,
the Gamma.
they look good, and that fucking. So, far be it from me to say that they should have had that fucking robot fighting everybody for the entire time that they were down on that planet, but that robot design was really cool too. Like when he finally came out, that was very cool. So yeah, I'm gonna say style.
How many lives would have been saved if they just said that down?
I guess that's like a very specific computer thing that he has, and nobody else's iPad transforms into a fucking mech.
This one fucking guy has this badass robot. Like, do they not have the fucking tech to fight these fucking things?
Somewhat of a plot
Look
hole,
at how cool that robot was.
That was awesome.
But anyway,
hindsight's 2020. Next,
But sure,
I'll give the style a 1 overall.
And I'll mention one more fun thing. You mentioned that the music they used was the original from. I thought it while it may be somewhat in quotes generic space music, it all fit again. And if it's true that it's a 1-to-1 ratio,
I thought at times it was better than just generic. Sometimes
actually,
it was very.
I guess you're right. 1 or 2 scenes, I was like, all right, it's pretty solid. So I'll just throw that into the mix for style and still give it a 1 for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. So it's 1s all around?
Think so?
Okay. And Steve-O, to you, do you recommend this movie?
I am not sure if I recommend this movie. So the last movie we reviewed, I'm not sure if it's going to come out before this or after this.
It's going to come out before this.
All right. So on Monday, I said that I couldn't recommend that movie to over 50% of the people that I knew. I'm not sure that I could recommend this movie to over 50% of the people that I know either.
I'm kind of struggling with that too. I know where you're coming from.
And it's a weird thing to say because I just came up with that for the last at the last second at the last episode that we did, but it seems like it probably affects this one too if I was saying that. I'm not I don't know who I would say, "Hey, check this movie out too." I mean, there are a couple people for sure that I would tell to check out, but not a ton. However, and here's the other thing. I'm not sure I would watch this movie again unless it was like put on for me.
That's basically what's going to be my argument for like a soft 0 on recommend. Like, yeah, you're right. You said it was a fun ride, a fun romp while you were watching it. I really don't have any desire to see this movie again. Like, I'm not like dying for it. Like, and if people were like, "Hey, can you recommend a good live action like space fucking movie?" Like, and also like sub question, is it adapted from an anime? Like, maybe then I could. But like, right?
A very specific
Yeah,
circumstance.
exactly. Right. So like you said, like it's going to be a narrow range in which I'd be like, yeah, I totally recommend it. Like, yeah, it wasn't bad. Don't get me wrong. I didn't like hate this movie or I wasn't bored by it at any means. Like throughout the initial watch through, but at the same time, I don't know if it necessarily like is something I'm going to think about in a week or two or less.
Without having seen it, I would probably recommend the anime over this movie.
Have you seen the anime?
No, without
That's what he's saying,
without
right?
having
Like-
seen it.
Oh, okay.
Like knowing that an anime exists that this movie is based on. Right?
Because there are so many points during this movie where I was like, oh, this would be way cooler as an anime.
Yeah, you might
Because
as
it
well
was
watch
based
the
off an anime. And like I was like, yeah, I'd kind of rather be watching. Like, granted, I didn't want to watch 20 episodes of something at that moment, but
Sure, no, I see what you mean, buddy.
But yeah, like it's, I feel like the anime is probably much cooler than the film.
So yeah, so I guess my final thought is I'm probably going to come out on a soft 0 and recommend like it's not terrible, it's not a shitty movie or anything like that. It's just not enough like for me to like think about or like breathlessly gush to anybody like you have to see this. I can recommend other space-ish movies. It's a mishmash of, in a sense, other ones I think were better done. So
It's really damned by the fact that it's not either better or worse.
yeah,
Mm.
true.
It's just that level of enjoyable. Like
Yeah.
I've saw a lot of when growing up, like movies on like Saturday afternoons they would have on TV, and like good adventure films that I would never recommend to another person to see, but I enjoyed it while I was
While it
watching
lasted, yeah.
That's what like. So no, I couldn't recommend this. Not that it's poor. It's just
No, I completely understand. I did recommend the movie. And
well, your wife recommended the movie.
well, my wife recommended the movie and I wholeheartedly,
Endorsed it.
endorsed
Yes.
it because I have recommended this movie. I mean, yes, I've known a lot of people who grew up with this. I know a lot of geeks and I'm like, you've got to see Yamato. Like when I saw the trailer came out before it was released in Japan, I forwarded it to a whole shitload of my friends. I'm like, dude, you got to see this. So yeah, I endorsed my wife's recommendation on it and I am definitely going to recommend it. But that's not to say that I totally were it not for our track record
Your
of that.
affinity, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I understand what you guys are saying because it is a tough movie to walk into cold. It really is, and there is a level of bias or familiarity that goes into the recommendation. It doesn't make it better or worse. It's just different, you know. Hey, as Steve-O brought up on Monday's episode with Jarmusch, one of my favorite directors, I didn't recommend that
Sure.
movie, and it's also one of those things where, like, you know, I knew if you knew Jarmusch, you're going to watch it. In this case, I've already done the recommending up until now, so you know I'm giving it a 1
All right.
because I've already given it a 1.
Totally valid, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay,
All right, so shall you tell us where that leaves us at?
yes, I gave it a 9. You all gave it a 7, which leaves us at a 7.5,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is fair.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, it's fine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there was, you know, we all agreed on one thing and just a couple minor things, but overall, it's an above average score.
Yeah, I don't begrudge it that score, and I think it
Fun flick.
It earned itself into it as we talked it out. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to say? Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I am Chris Morgan here with Jonathan Ian Manzer,
Gotta go kamikaze myself into a battleship.
Stephen Armosi,
Still trying to unjam my gun.
Scott
and
Thurlow.
I'm scrounging for a scrap on the radiated Earth. See you next time.
Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?